I'm here with the GGRecon Player Panel, the second edition of our Overwatch panels. And I've assorted a wide variety. Interestingly, all players that ended up on new teams. In Danteh, of course, new signing for the Los Angeles Gladiators. We got that over the line before, like we planned when you were not announced yet. Pretty much the same for Hydron. And then, of course, Punk, who I think you were announced for a while, right? Like you probably...
Yeah. It's been a good couple weeks. So.
What have you been doing so far, like with Titans, Punk?
With Titans, I think I chose my jersey number, and that's about it. To be honest, still off season, still holidays. So,
Hydron, you said you guys started scrimming already, right?
Yeah, we started scrimming. I picked my jersey number, and in Canada, we have to get our visas since we're all Americans, so we're kind of waiting on that before we move. Yeah, so.
Are there any teams even to scrim right now?
Just contenders, and I think like Paris, kind of just like the teams with American players majority, because a lot of teams have Koreans, Europeans, so it's kind of hard for them to scrim.
Makes sense. What about you guys, Danteh? Have you guys done any scrimming or anything like that?
No, we haven't done any scrimming. It's really hard with European and Korean players because there's no good server to play. Like if we play Korea servers, Europeans get really high ping. If we play NA, like we have to play East Coast, and then the Korean players get really high ping. So it's like there's just no good server.
For sure. Now you all three had to pick a new team. Very different circumstances, and we'll get to talk about that. But in essence, this feels like a bit of a weird off-season, right? Like everyone's talking about, you know, how esports in general is going. There's a lot of gloating about the Overwatch League in general, and surely this has also impacted how your off-season went. So did you guys like form any other strategy in order to find your teams? Were you just happy to take like a stable deal? Or Punk, what was it like for you? Like what was your goal this season?
I think the goal was to find a new team. I've been with Boston for like 4 years, 5 if you count the academy. It was time for me to let go and move on. So I wanted somewhere that was nice to live, and you know, because that's become more of a thing that I look for now, because getting older, it's just nicer, maturing. So that was kind of my one thing that I was looking out for. And luckily the teams that I was talking to were saying that they had nice places to live. So obviously a good deal as well. Like with everything kind of going wrong, at least like is what's being like posted on Twitter and news articles, like everyone's saying it's the end. So it was important to get a good deal, but also just like a good group of guys who will work hard and like have fun with, but also like punch and compete. So those were like my main factors for choosing a team.
For sure. Danteh, how did you feel during this offseason? Like, do you feel some insecurity, and were you just happy to land with a team like as prestigious and I mean as high aspirations as Gladiators?
Yeah, so I actually got extended at first by Outlaws, but then they like later saw the opportunity to go full Korean and like make a really stacked team. So I got released a little bit into the window, and I was like a little nervous because a lot of teams plan really early. Like half the teams already had like their rosters decided. A lot of teams were like full Korean, so it didn't give many options. It was basically just budget team and like Gladiators and like maybe like Atlanta or something, but Atlanta has like it's just like there's no good fit anywhere except for Gladiators. So I'm really happy that I landed at Glads. Have a decent offer. I was content with it. Living in LA, like Punk mentioned, like the location's important for me too. It's just really nice living somewhere nice. Just brings up your overall mood and energy. So I'm pretty happy with the ways things went.
Hydron, you guys had I feel like you pulled a heist on the league that really didn't happen that often. Like, so like just to explain to the viewers what it looks like you guys pulled off is like Of course, on American Tornado, I think you have an agent, Ferris, right?
Yeah.
You negotiate with all your teams that you are only going to sign 1+0s. Those are highly unusual in the Overwatch League. At least they were in past seasons. So your teams didn't have an option yet. They couldn't hold you apart. And then you presumably just came up with like, okay, let's meet somewhere once we've all proven our value in the league and like meet somewhere else in the team and come together again. Was that always the plan?
Yeah, that was the whole, Grandmaster plan since the beginning of last season. Like we knew that we wanted to show like what we were capable of together, but unfortunately the first year we tried to pull that up, but money speaks a bit louder. But we always had in our like back pocket to where, let's get it 1 year. So just in case things go wrong, like, we can always come back together. And so our agreement with all the guys on the team was if none of us gets first place, we have to do this again. We have to do this again. And so, luckily Sam, Kalush, luckily they choked. So
It is presumably like you guys then got to basically negotiate with a bunch of teams. Did you have a couple of offers there for the entire squad?
yeah, I'd say there were a couple teams interested in us. But at the end of the day, we kind of went with what we were most comfortable with, like in terms of like Asaurus. Like I had Mechasaurus, had all the lands. I was Sam Kaluja's coaches, and so we kind of had a feel with him. With the other teams, like one, we didn't know location. We didn't know who the coaches were, so we were kind of just like skeptical in that sense. So we kind of went with what we were most comfortable with. And plus, we already had been to Toronto that year at the LAN. So
Makes sense, yeah. Now, one thing that happened, and it feels like this was mainly an issue that was really impacting the players. Not only player salaries probably across the league tank, also we delayed the signing window repeatedly, which presumably, at least, depending on how good you're at negotiating, cut down on your ability to earn during those months. But maybe it also might have impacted your opportunity. So I guess, Danteh, for you, did you know, or did you personally miss out on any deals because of the repeated signing window delay, or did you hear about anyone missing out on deals there?
I don't know. I can't really speak for others. I think I made a verbal agreement on like December 1st or something. I was supposed to sign on like December 2nd or whatever the original period was. I'm not sure. And then it got pushed back, and I just like talked to them. I was like, oh, since like I verbal agreed, like one of the reasons I wanted to like get back on like verbal agree so early is I want to get back on payroll because it's like something to like consider because the earlier you sign, the earlier you get paid. And I just mentioned that, and I was like, yeah, if I could get like a signing bonus like for the amount of time that I would have been getting paid, that'd be appreciated since like I already committed to you guys, and they were really nice about it. They did it for me, so it was like good relations with them. Didn't really get fucked over by it, so I'm happy about that.
Punk, like, how was it for you guys? Like, was it also stressful to just like, okay, you mentioned like you just wanted to find a new team, you valued different things, but was it also sort of like, okay, this is a handshake agreement, but I mean, theoretically, they could walk it back, right?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
did get scared actually. Oh, sorry.
No, go on.
I did get scared actually. When like a day before the signing window opened, they're like, "Oh yeah, 17-year-olds can play now." Because like Junvin is like crazy tank player, and like our team's mixed, and Smash also coached Junvin before, so there's always a possibility that like Junvin would want to play with us if he doesn't want to like solo tank. For Shock, if he's going to Shock, I don't know. That's like the rumor. I'm just gonna assume it because like all O2's there. But I was nervous about that. So, but that was only for like a day.
How about you,
So
Punk?
that's it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Vancouver knew that it was like not confirmed, and they were kind of the ones a little bit worried. I think they'd kind of planned on me being their tank like from the start, and I was always in talks with them from the start, and so I'd pretty much said like I really want to join. But this was the first time that I'd ever been a free agent, so I was like, I'm gonna take my time. I'm gonna talk to as many teams as I can, and that's what I did. So I had a few teams, and there was more that was like doing trials and stuff. But when it came to the first date, I was pretty confident that I was gonna go with Vancouver. So once it moved, it wasn't too hectic. It kind of, if anything, I think it felt like from them they were like a bit worried now that I would like take more time to shop around. But throughout the whole thing, I was pretty solid on Vancouver, so it wasn't too bad.
Right. Now, there are some GMs in the league, and I think Bree has a good track record there that just says like, who says like it's important salary for sure, but players have now, as they matured, also realized that's not the entire equation, right? Like high salary is nice, but knowing who your teammates are or who your coaches are, like this is equally important. And then of course you mentioned location. Do you think, Hydron, for you guys, do you think some of you could have earned more elsewhere if you went there independently, but chose like the team aspect?
Yeah, I think for sure. I think, especially with some of our guys who came from like pretty good seasons, they definitely could have punched up, I would say, in their salary, but I would say they punched a little bit down in terms of salary wise because of all of the other things you mentioned, like the city, like the living conditions was nice in Toronto. Salary was still good, like nothing to complain about. The coaches, like I'll give an example, like Kaluge, right? He probably could have, like after that year, he probably could have punched up way up in salary. He was like damn near a role star. But he decided to stay with us because of Cass, the city, and just the fact that he knows all of us. We played on a team together for 2 years. And so yeah, as well as me, like I'd rather be comfortable where I am than get paid a little bit more, but be under all like those other circumstances, just have them be pretty bad.
How about you, Dante? Do you have like a set of like priorities that you figured out for yourself?
In my head, I wanted to join like a strong team. I didn't really want to join a weaker team because just or a roster that sounds weak because it's just like really depressing, just losing every game or like losing a lot of scrims. So any like new form team could be a big risk for that, and a lot of the new form teams were like budget and stuff. A lot of the teams are just going full Korean, so it didn't really leave many options because all the good APAC players are coming here. So there weren't many good options. So in my head, was really considering just a strong team or collegiate, and luckily I got an offer from a strong team. So I'm really happy that it worked out.
Was it hard to negotiate all the rest of the stuff? Because salary is one thing, but like, I mean, we keep hearing like, the offer for food and the offer for housing is like something that players now want to talk about. Probably also rightfully, because depending on the location you're in, it's probably pretty expensive to rent, and it's probably pretty expensive to cook for yourself or have meals ready and all the hassle of that. How much is convenience, Punk? Like just having stuff figured out for you. How important is that?
It just makes it easier. Like the more of those little things, like the easier it is to just live a normal life, and you'll be happier and healthier, and that helps when you play. Like, it's going to be worse when you're depressed or you're eating poorly or you got no nice place to live. And so all those things stack up. And like Vancouver had a lot of those little things. So it was nice to be included. And it's not like a necessity for anything. Like you don't need it to play, but it just helps a lot. So
you guys also had housing in Outlaws, right, Dante?
Yeah, we got a stipend, and then, or at least for my apartment, they like had me do more stuff because I was more independent. But I think for the Korean players, they just like paid for the apartments for them. Me, it was like a stipend, so it's like basically I just have to I have the responsibility of it. But yeah, they did cover housing.
Did you? I heard some stories. I think you guys were in the Woodlands, right? Is that something like? Is it like boring to live in those locations? Do you mind, or is it just like, I mean, you're playing video games and that's it, doesn't matter where you are?
I'm not the biggest fan because like basically if you don't have a car, look, I have a car. If you don't have a car, you kind of feel stranded in some areas. Texas isn't really walkable. So places like Texas, probably Boston. I don't know every area, but
Florida.
Florida, yeah. Some areas just don't feel good if you don't have a car. I didn't have that issue in LA. It felt really nice like walking around in my first 2 years, but it can be an issue.
Sure.
Yeah, Boston was nice, but we were kind of like way out from the city. We were in Foxborough, which is like where the NFL team plays. So it's like way out in the sticks, like an hour away from the city. So we were pretty remote. And yeah, unless you
Yeah.
had a car, like we had a team van, but like I drove it a couple times, but you know, we used that for meals and everything. So it was like, it wasn't always there. So it's just hard. You're just like kind of, yeah, like Dante, just stranded. So
Yeah, I think a lot of teams do that because it's like you can live in the suburbs and like if you like need to go to the city, like it's still close enough, and like you're still considered in that area, and it's just a lot cheaper, you know. So it makes sense from like a lot of teams' perspectives, but from like a player perspective, it can be not fun if you're like probably Korean because less Korean food if you're farther from the city, and then you won't want to have a car if you like don't live in the country actually. So it it kind of sucks, but I can understand why teams do it.
Right, makes sense. Now,
Yeah, in Florida. Oh,
yeah, go on, go on.
no, in Florida, we are like the area we were in was pretty much like a geriatric zone. Like there was, it was only retired people who had money and just had like Corvettes and stuff. But like especially me, when I signed on Florida, I was 17. Um, and I had the option to get like a driver's license in Florida, but I don't know, just kind of the way it works in New York, where you have to be 18 to get a license, and you have to have a New York insurance. So it only makes sense for me to get my license in New York. And so I literally could not have had a car in Florida if I wanted to. So, but luckily now in Toronto, like it's literally in the city. Like everything is a 5 minute walk, 10 minute walk. But places like Texas, Florida, Boston, just anywhere where there's a lot of like land, it's you're pretty much stuck to your apartment and office.
Do you players then stick together and like drive to XYZ together, or is everyone like after practice it's just like everyone goes their own way?
It
Uh,
depends if somebody on the team has a car.
Right.
Like nobody on Florida
yeah,
had a car. It was just like Albert and the team van. But that, I'm not gonna ask them to drive while they're home and
Right.
stuff. So I'll just order stuff to my apartment.
For me, I would drive my car to the office. I would just drive my roommate, like Lastro, and like sometimes Creative and Lap. But just like we would go with the coaches, or some people would go with coaches, some would go with me. And then I offered to go places with people, but most of our Korean players last year were really like just game, like go home, like play Overwatch for 8 hours at the office, go home, play 5 more hours, and
yeah,
they didn't like doing much stuff. That's just like how a lot of gamers are, honestly. A lot of people like when it's season time, it's like grind, grind, grind. But I don't know. For me, I like especially on our off days and stuff, I like to like actually like get out of the house, do stuff, do errands, like just have a rest day. It is like really important, especially in your further years in the league. You like really start to value it more.
yeah,
Were you
definitely.
heavily on your grinds, Hydron, the entire season, or?
I mean, as much as I try to be, half the season didn't have ranked, so it was a bit tough
Ah,
Right.
for that. But I mean, I would play
I
like
forgot about
drug
that.
bugs that we try to do, but kind of died out. But I would come home from scrims 2, 3 blocks and just do nothing because there was no rank, there was nothing. So it was either watch the VOD or YouTube. That was it.
Punk, did you do anything like, I don't know, anything else with the teammates like outside of practice?
Yeah, we tried to do like team sports, like volleyball every now and then, which is fun, but it's more of like a rare occurrence, and like just going out to the shops or something you can't really do. So it's also, it depends on personalities and like relationships within the team, you know. We had a mixed team, so like some of the Korean guys just wouldn't like doing what I would like doing and vice versa. So it's just
Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, I will have to paraphrase what the players said, as the audio quality briefly dipped to indiscernible levels. We apologize for that. Danteh says that it's hard to spend time with your teammates in a mixed team, not just because of the language barrier, but also because of differing interests. Hydron shares that he tried his best to help overcome cultural barriers by knocking on his teammates' doors and trying to get them to join activities with him. Punk agrees and says that getting along is an important part of team culture. Danteh adds that the beginning of last season was weird for him, as he was the only Western player on the roster.
The primary English, or the primary language, like mostly Korean. We didn't speak that much English. Like when we were eating food and stuff, it'd be like 80% Korean. And then if they were talking to me, it'd feel like they had to talk to me because like I'm part of the team. So it felt like kind of weird sometimes. But as the season went on, like it disappeared more and more. And then like with Lep and like Doge coming to the team, it changed the vibe a lot because we like started talking more English for our team. We used to talk full Korean all the time, or not all the time, but like 70% Korean, like 30% English. But then I went to like full English and comms, so that was my experience with it.
Presumably, like the longer you are in a team or in the league, you get some more status, some more say, right? Like how much say did you have, Danteh, like over your, teammates that you got each season?
They valued my input. Obviously, I wouldn't have like full like say, but they listened to what I had to say. And Junkbuck, he's like a smart coach, so things that he thought were good, I also thought were good. There were like a couple takes I was like, maybe like careful. But for the most part, I agreed with like the things that he brought to our team, the players and like staff and all that. So mid-season, they don't really talk to players that much because mid-season it's like more drama. But like during off-season, I think that's when the communication is more open between like the veterans of the team and the coaches and stuff.
Should players always be consulted in terms of like what their teammates are and what they think about the skills and whatnot, Hydron?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Do you think like the coaches should always consider like the player input, or should it be dictated top down in terms of like how the team should work?
I mean, I think to a degree, like there should be a balance, of course, because the team is the players, right? You can have 6, 7 players and not have a coach, realistically. So I think valuing our opinions, I would say is really important because not only do we play the game, but we're playing for the team and we're playing under these coaches. So having like a kind of a back and forth where you can talk to the coaches, they can reciprocate back, I think is really healthy instead of more of like a dictatorship where one coach says one thing and that's it. Like you can't argue with him. Like that's the end all be all. And which I think eventually kind of creates this dynamic where it's like, wow, this guy's not listening to me. So you kind of like bond over the fact that, man, these coaches don't listen to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think during the season it's like kind of tricky meeting that like need. Like you can't have communication completely open with players and coaches because like if like I feel like your coach's thoughts can kind of like taint players and stuff. Like if they like really feel like support is an issue or something, and like they like open with the players like, oh, like we're looking at this player for like support or something. I feel like it could like kind of like taint the players' mindsets and stuff, and like they start scapegoating and stuff. So for me, I think it's like really important that they only like keep communication clear during off season before the season because you want to avoid like any sort of tension. And I feel like every team has problems, even teams that like win everything like during like the mid season and stuff. Like every team has problems during the season. I think it's important that the coaches keep that separate from the players.
Yeah, I think at Boston with Laurie, we had like there was very little say in what the players' thoughts like were. It was basically what Laurie said. Laurie goes, and they'd all have like the management meeting, and it kind of left all our players in the dark. And someday they would be like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna sub out this guy. We're gonna do this," and it takes it away a bit from the game and like all trying to be a team together. So when he left and we had Ashkoft for the stage 4, which wasn't really a stage because there was no tournament, but it was more of a like team, like we were all working together. We all had our inputs, and I think finding that balance of like having an authoritative figure is really, really important, because you can't have one of the coaches be a player as well, because they don't play, and it's hard because they are the ones who still make the decisions at the end of the day. So it's good to have a balance, but it's super important to listen and for everyone to have their input valued, which is what we had in stage 4, and we did. It felt better to play, and we ended up getting better results, which was really nice. So
Kind of piggybacking off what Dante said. Like I agree that like to a certain extent, like not everything the coaches thinks about the team or what's going on should be communicated, but I think there is a degree to where like it has to be said, because if the coaches think like, let's say what he said, support's an issue, and they're thinking about signing this player or trading this player, I think it's worse if the team doesn't get told at all, because then it's kind of like a shock to where it's like, oh my god, like he just got kicked, and now it becomes kind of this like uneasiness between the team where it's like, man, like that guy just got kicked. What if I'm next? You know what I mean? I mean, which kind of happened before. Like Mir got kicked, Adam got kicked. So with that kind of uneasiness and kind of like lack of communication, we're all kind of like on the edge where it's like, I know you two are untouchable, but I could probably get kicked. You know what I mean?
That makes sense, but I think it's like I don't know. It's like a really like with cutting players and stuff. I think it's like a really dangerous line because like if like when do you even say it in advance? You can't say it anytime in advance because it'll just spread through the team, and then the
you
team's
can't
like more
say
divided,
we're
and it
gonna
breaks the
cut you.
morale. Yeah, so it's just like a hard conversation. Yeah, I don't know.
Are teams transparent with players when they're starting to shop them around even mid-season? Like, are you guys told if that is ever an option on the table? I think
If your teammates are, or if you are.
if you are.
Oh,
Sometimes.
I think so.
I think if you request it, then yeah.
Sure.
If
Yeah.
your team is just looking at overall trades, because I'm pretty sure like a lot of teams just like put up like everything for offer just to see what other teams are looking for and how other teams want to do it. At least that's my understanding of like how the trading goes. Because like even if you like offer, like you don't have to like confirm it until you confirm it. So I don't think they should tell everyone because it's like they're just exploring possibilities and like learning about other teams as well while they're doing that.
I
And
think a
if
lot
they
of
tell
teams
you,
just. Oh yeah, go on.
if they tell you, then it's like, you're going to be thinking about that instead of just
Yeah,
focusing on the
exactly.
game. So
Yeah, I think a lot of teams just kind of just shop around just to kind of just test the waters. Like there's not too much like action behind their thought. It's kind of just to see, which is from my understanding, they kind of just like to shop around and see what they can get their money for.
Sure. Like just trying to trade up, like maybe there's a better way to conserve salary here and there. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe not even like salary, but maybe like if, I don't know, maybe they think this person on this team who isn't really being used could probably suit them better. You know, maybe they might shop around. From what I understand, but I don't think I've experienced that too much. So
Interesting. Now another thing is like, how much should you be competing with the person that is in your role for the same role, and how much should you be helping that person, right? So presumably, I mean, you're all going for the same goal. Your team should win, but you also presumably want to do something that's valuable for your career, which is you should probably start as much as possible, right? Especially on heroes maybe where there's overlap. So did you feel like intense competition against your direct counterparts, and or like more like a camaraderie in like winning games? For instance, Hydron, like you had famously like the head-to-head with XC, right? Like what was your feelings there? Hydron says that he felt that XC was definitely better on some heroes while he was better on others, and that they complemented each other well. The approach in Florida was top-down, so the coaching staff decided who played and what. When XC was chosen, Hydron tried his best to help him. Punk, like in your position, I feel like it's very easy, especially in teams that aren't winning like an exceptional amount. And we hear it time and time again that there's like group building, especially like between language groups, right? Is it not that you then in your group, especially like if there's more than one competitor with you, is it not hard to like not encapsulate you and like your group from the rest and try to compete against them inside the team?
That's like the bad side of mixed teams, I think. And what ends up happening most of the time with the teams is that it becomes a bit of a turf war of like this side of the team versus this side of the team. And it's hard because you're all on the same team and you're all trying to win, and that just gets in the way, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
But it's like, it takes away from just playing and trying to win. But I've had a fair share of people I've been competing with for the 3 years or something, and I've always tried to help them and like be nice to them, like make them feel welcome, even though there's that inherent tension which is going to come along with like I want to play and he wants to play. And I really wanted to prove every time that I was capable and going to help the team. So it kept that fire in me to keep going every time that it was like, oh, this guy's going to play. But I would, you'd still help them and try and win on the weekends and make sure that they felt welcome. So I think it was
Yeah.
important to like, despite everything, just be nice. So
Yeah, don't be like a shithead politician on your team and like make people go into groups and stuff. Like, let's see. I went in the leagues
yeah,
in season 1. There was someone that like tried to do that in season 1, but season 1 shock, it didn't really work too well because most of the team was actually pretty mature for how young that team was, but it wasn't like that in season 1. Season 2, there was definitely someone that like tried to like run politics in the team. I don't know, it's just childish people that like are immature. Season 3, still someone that was like trying to make politics in the team and just like split people apart, like get people to dislike other people over like pettiness and being benched and stuff. Season 4 was like really good. No one was like that, and like even season 5, we had like people like that on Outlaws. Like it's like really common to have people that like can't handle being benched and stuff and make politics in the team. Like a lot of teams have to deal with it, and like it's not fun for anyone. Like as soon as people start doing that stuff, it brings so much tension, and people get more upset with each other over things that people shouldn't be upset about.
yeah.
So
There's a lot
don't
of
be like that. It's not
scenarios.
fun. Yeah.
There's a lot of scenarios which I've seen and heard about where, there's just players who will refuse to play with other players, and like it's just terrible.
Yeah,
That happened
that's
when
the
I came
worst of the
into
worst.
Boston in season 3. There was players who just refuse to play with other people, and it makes it hard for everybody, coaches, staff, like players. It doesn't help. So just being nice and working towards winning is the only thing that people should be doing.
Is there a point where everyone's too nice and is not telling each other that they're kind of like lacking here and there, and like just for the sake of peace, like everyone's just remaining mediocre?
I think so. I think there is. You got to find the balance again, because if you're too nice and you won't ever say if someone's doing something wrong, or like you don't like how they're acting or something, then you're not going to go anywhere. So it's got to be constructive, and you've got to have that like open relationship where it's like I can tell you when you're screwing up, and you can tell me, and that's just because we want to be better. So you can't beat around the bush or tiptoe or something, just because you're trying to be the nicest person ever. You gotta be able to talk to each other. So
Yeah, I've actually gotten that feedback from Junkbook before. He told me like I'm too nice to people like when they make mistakes, like because like mistakes have had like sometimes they get repeated too many times, and like sometimes you get punished for them even if it's not your mistake. She's like, Dante, like you have to stop being so nice. Like if you don't call people out, like you're not gonna like people aren't gonna get better. Like people like need to know that they're fucking up, and that's why you're like being punished for it. So I've gotten that feedback before. It's like an important skill, but just make sure you do it in like a responsible way. Don't be toxic about it. Like just knowing how to say things is so important for being a good teammate.
Hydron, will you guys be accurately going in on each other, like constructively?
Oh, constructively, absolutely not.
Not
But
constructively.
that's the beauty, I think, of being friends for so many years, is to where I can say literally anything to you and you won't get offended. Which is the benefit of kind of American Tornado coming back. But I think even on Florida, I think we ended up being such good friends that we could tell each other stuff and no one would take it hard. Like we would flame each other and then we would have Korean barbecue right after. Like no one cared that much because all the stuff that's in game stays in game, and the out of game is out of game.
Right. Okay. So off-season check mark. Let's get to the heart of the discussion. I think I was really excited about, because I think towards the end of the last panel, pre-mentioned, like there's one issue in the Overwatch League that actually is a root cause for a lot of the problems that we see, and it's a disconnect between pro players and the development team, or a communication in that regard. So, without giving too much away, I'm aware you can't talk about everything. What is the relationship between like pro players and developers right now? Maybe Danteh.
As a player that's been in the league for like 5 years, even though it's like not the best, I actually do think it's a lot better than previous seasons. Like before in like season 1 and 2, I feel like we would like barely ever hear from the devs, and like the patches were even like farther away. Like they wouldn't tell anything to the community either.
Danteh goes on to say that the devs talk to the players occasionally, though not as much as they would like, of course, and that it is still very much appreciated. Hydron agrees and thinks the communication could be further improved. He then continues.
We've played the game since it came out. Like if you took the amount of time we've played the game, we could have like a PhD or something, or like a doctorate or something crazy. So it feels like, people like us who put in that amount of time should feel like our opinion is much more valued than it is currently.
Yeah, I think they're definitely trying. I think they're doing like more panels with content creators and stuff like that, and so they're showing up more in like the public view and like the media and stuff. And like Danteh said, they respond even if they don't agree, and they're responding to basically shut down the feedback. At least they're telling you why, which is important. So I think they're trying, but again, it's just a bit slow, and I have no idea why. There's probably good reasons why it's slow, but it just feels very slow.
How much of a lack of like back and forth is on the responsibility of the pro players? Because I mean, I can tell you, sometimes someone sends me screenshots of some of your coworkers going in or having very spicy language there towards developers. Would you wish that, is it warranted, or should you maybe be a little bit more diplomatic?
I think a lot of the like new players are pretty rude with their feedback, so I think they could just be nicer, because like if someone's being rude to you, like do you want to give them that time? No, you probably don't. Yeah, just I wish people could be a little more chill with feedback. Like I understand, I'm a player, I've been a player for a long time. Like we're frustrated, but just adding more attention doesn't help the relationship much.
Sure. Now, there's another.
Any thoughts on that, Hydron? Any thoughts on the feedback from the new players?
Well, it's not me. Could be a teammate, but it's not me.
Maybe a few teammates.
I mean, I understand where they're coming from. Rightfully so. It's not like it's unwarranted. Sure, it's a bit of an ass, but it's definitely not unwarranted. I would say so. Like they definitely, I feel like, kind of have it coming. But anyway, not me.
Right. So you control F, Hydron.
It's just not me. You can go.
Okay, I'm control F-ing.
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on, Punk.
It's just like, everyone's frustrated sometimes, so it can come across that way, and it doesn't help. But yeah, I don't know.
I think the main thing that brings tension is when there's like bad changes that like affect your job. Like when it can affect your like job security and like how well you do, because like things aren't getting addressed. That's when things get like spicy, and like some
The
people
Doom
just don't handle
bugs.
things the best.
I think example, like I think Backbone maybe spent the entire season asking for like May bug fixes, and because
Yeah.
Eleven's like a predominantly like rush team, like I could see how that could
Yeah, like that's just like really
Yeah.
frustrate
frustrating. Like
players
it's
like
like
that.
affecting your like main hero in Overwatch. Like it's like bugged. It's like so frustrating.
I feel like Overwatch is a game where like bugs do sometimes determine like the outcome of certain games, which
Yeah,
is
like there are probably so many
could be
Bernard's
players
grab
like
went
disheartening.
through the map in like the playoffs or something, and it's just
yeah.
what there's also there's very little written rules about like how to fix that during a game. You know, if it happens, then it's just kind of unlucky. You don't get compensated or anything. So
I mean, we had to redo a half versus Paris.
there, you
Oh
cheated.
yeah.
You cheated, guys. You
From
cheated.
bags. You know, Jake
Um,
reported you guys. He said in our Houston Outlaws channel, he's like, "Is that allowed? I don't think that's allowed."
Yeah, of course.
Whatever.
I
Legend.
I guess also like the question then has to be asked like how much individual player input should there be? Because okay, if I don't know, like if I'm Aming or like I guess if I'm Gaga or whatever, and I have a like a connection to the developers, dude, I'm pushing that ball gets buffed and becomes meta, right? Like if I'm a one trick, I'm trying to sweet talk myself into a position where developers talk more to me, maybe outside the balance channel, and like try to affect the the balance of the game. So is there a problem of competitive integrity that maybe some players could by the power of their arguments, of course that's one thing, but like also just by power of more diplomatically voicing their opinion that should that be more publicly discussed, or how do you think about competitive integrity and like input of pro players on game balance?
I think there was listen when after stage 1 and Doom got nerfed. Listen, there was a lot of Doom players, a lot of Doom teams that were
But-
complaining about Doom, and because obviously like those heroes kind of grant them a lot of success. And so I could see that, but I think at the end of the day, like that problem is up to the devs, to where you can't have players like sweet talking you. I
yeah,
would say.
I think as a player, for example, like the Doom feedback, it all came from players that played a lot of Doom. Like when we would give like a bunch of feedback, uh, me, Ryder, Hawk would always talk on the feedback panel because we like played it the most out of everyone. Like we understand where he's weak and where he's good and like what changes would be good. But also it could be like seen as like, oh, we just want to like stay good. Like the devs can see that way. I think it's kind of tricky. Like from that aspect, like of competitive integrity, because if you're like the best at different heroes, like you're gonna know like the best feedback from, but also if they get fucked, like it also helps your team. So it's like kind of weird. Um, I don't know
Yeah.
like what the solution is.
I mean,
I think that's why they don't really listen too intently. Like they do listen and they respond, but it's not like they don't base it off pros, and that's clear. They said that.
but I think, sorry, but I think like I really believe that it should be kind of balanced around pros, like not necessarily like specifics, but kind of like the meta it is in pro play, because I think at the end of the day, whatever meta it is in pro player in the league, it does not apply to everyone else. Like it does not apply, I would say, to below GM, below like it doesn't matter how good you are at Kiriko, like it's not going to work with your teammates at gold or plat. So, because I mean, I've played in those ranks. Like I've had to rank up accounts, and people play whatever and whatever. Like regardless of the meta, like it does not matter what heroes you play. If you're better, you'll win.
Yeah, that's also true. Like meta's kind of like a myth at the low ranks because it's like the meta comps work because they're like one or two swaps away from beating anything, and like they cover all bases. But you're not gonna have that kind of team play at lower ranks and stuff. So
yeah, people
makes
just play what
sense.
they want.
Yeah, just play what you want. Play your best hero, and if it's a good matchup, you'll win. And if you're
Especially
better.
especially like because I think in like the outer scope, like we've been complaining about like heroes like Kiriko, Orisa, and so I think it's kind of like it's kind of viewed as like a slap in the face to when like the latest patch comes out and it's like Hog is nerfed and Kiriko's barely touched and Sojourner is kind of buffed, in a sense. So I don't know. That's my take on it.
Do you often find that pro players have like, agree on the state of the balance, or is there a lot of disagreement always? Like that's too overpowered, and that team thinks like X, Y, and Z is too strong and needs a nerf, and the other team might have a different opinion. Is there a lot of back and forth in those channels about game balance?
I think generally, like if you were to get the pro players and the teams and we'd be like, do you think this is good or do you think this is bad? I think like 70-80% would, like the league would agree with each other. Because there's obvious like heroes like Sojourner are OP, Kiriko's OP. Like there's a lot of obvious imbalances in the game that I think we can all agree on. But I think some teams will definitely have their biases towards certain heroes because they want those heroes to be played because it's better for their team. But I would say like 70-80%, like we can all see it. We all play the game.
You guys agree?
Yeah, it's usually
Yeah,
one
I
meta
agree.
as well. So like it's Kiriko Rush meta. Everyone sees that you can't play anything
Kiriko
else
is the
because
issue.
of some hero. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I think one issue with the developers is they don't see like the bigger picture of how things affect. They're like, oh, like Kiriko has like a 49% win rate, like in all ranks. It's like we feel she's balanced, but like in pro play, like Kiriko like gatekeeps so many like heroes from being played, and it makes like only like like you can only play so many heroes with Kiriko that like mesh well, and they don't realize how that shapes the rest of the meta, like how heroes like Kiriko enable the rest of the meta, and I think it makes their balancing a little lax sometimes.
I was
They only see like the value of the win rate of the character and stuff.
I was watching Flat Stream just a little bit when he was talking to the Blizzard dev, and he was talking. They were talking about why they nerfed Genji and why that was the case. And the guy had said that Genji has kind of like an above 55% win rate between all ranks and in GM. But the bigger picture of that really is that Sojourn is the most OP here, and the second DPS to Sojourn, like all the other characters are so weak right now that anything kind of works. That's why you see in ranked, you see all these top 10 one tricks because heroes like Torb, Sim, Junk, you know, can compete with like heroes like Genji and Tracer. So that's why I feel like some of the times where these numbers don't hold the whole picture, which I feel like they look at a lot because at the end of the day, the meta is not the same that it is in GM. Like I can be in Diamond and I can play Widow literally everywhere because it does not matter.
Right, but like you as a developer, you have to consider the reality. Like if something wins 55, 57%
I
of the
think
time
Genji
at
should
gold,
have
right?
probably been nerfed. If it's like that bad, like 55% win rate, it's probably unhealthy for like lower ranks. But I think right now, like the win rates were pretty like healthy. Like they were all like near like I think they're all like 47 to like 51 or something. And I think that's when you can like make changes more for the highest level. Because if like a Kiriko has like a 49% win rate, and then you nerf things that like maybe nerf thing or try to focus nerfs that would hurt her at like the higher level, less than like the lower level, and then I think that's where you get like a more balanced Kiriko. Yeah.
Can we brainstorm like something like that? So for instance, I think it's not that easy to come up with changes that would help balance in pro play, but would keep the overall power level of that hero consistent over gold ranks. What would be something about Kiriko? Do you just buff like I don't know headshot hitbox or something like that, or like because the skill expression aspect of Kiriko would be the headshots? Maybe you. I mean, increasing the maybe give more ult charge based on damage done rather than just heal botting. Like, is there anything actionable that we could figure out? Like, what is the thing that about Kiriko that helps great players to differentiate themselves, but also helps balance the middle?
I think there's two things about her kit that's kind of fixable. I think her Suzu It cleanses, but it has like this immortality effect where it has no hitbox. You can't boop it. You can't hook it. You can't do anything. The person is literally invulnerable. Where compared to like BAP,
Bap, you
right?
can just boop them out of the immortality. Yeah.
Right. There's counterplay to it. So I feel like with Suzu, there's not that much counterplay, like, or even at all.
Yeah, it's a big AoE too, so like you can like miss it but still hit it, and you can hit multiple people. I think you can make it so you could only hit like one person, or just make the range smaller. Probably that'd be best. So you can only hit like two people, like if they're like standing like right next to each other. Because I feel like being able to hit like three people that are like standing in like a general area is kind of crazy for how strong the ability is. And like it's such a small cooldown. I think they just need to nerf the cooldowns. I don't know how that'll affect it in lower ranks. It just feels like she's too good. Like she heals well, she has insane damage, and she has like the best cooldowns in the game. So it's like kind of crazy.
I think she
I think
heals too much as well
yeah.
for a mechanic that you don't necessarily have to aim. Compared to like where Mercy heals less, Moira, I mean you don't more or less don't like you don't heal as much as Kiriko does. So I feel like there has to be a give and take where like Ana, I can hit every shot, but Kiriko's still gonna heal more. So why would I play a hero that requires, aim, where to compare I can just kind of autopilot with my left click.
Sure. Isn't a lot of her power also in the ultimate?
Yeah, her ult, or I think not so much anymore. I think her ult used to be really OP when it would like linger for like 2 seconds after you got out of the thing. I think now it does. How long does it linger for? Do you guys know? Like,
I have no idea.
but
It's not
basically
long.
before, yeah, before when you like were in the blue thing, like the thing, it would like stay for like 2 seconds after. So like I would play Winston, I would like go back to it and then jump in again, and I had it for like 2 seconds. It was like a big nerf to it, and the ult's a lot more balanced now, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it also only gives like 2 times cooldown, which is or 5 or something. But before it used to be ridiculous when it first came out. It was like you get Winston jump in 1 second, and now it's like what the other cooldowns make a big difference.
I think it changes like so much. Like when you can get 2 bubbles instead of 3 bubbles in it, it's like huge to your ult. So I think ult is a lot more balanced, but at least like insane OP.
I think another issue that frequently popped up, especially like over the years, and I think that has always been true, even at the professional level, is that it is very hard to predict where meta is going or what is clearly going to be overpowered without having scrimmed the particular changes, right? Do you think that still holds true? Like, in order to say if something is really balanced at the highest level, you gotta have some scrim experience first?
I think it just depends on the hero, like how overtuned it is. Like I think Kiriko is like really obvious that it was gonna be OP, like just because she changes like the way the game works. Like you can like teleport to high grounds and like clear them out. Like I think everyone knew that Kiriko was gonna be OP just because like immortality, movement ability, and insane survivability for support. So like it was like pretty obvious that Kiriko being that way is gonna be strong. I think Ram is like more up for debate. I think there's gonna be comps that beat Ram, honestly. So um, it just depends on the hero.
Yeah, I think if you just look at the kit, you'll kind of get an idea. Like Kiriko just does so much, teleport, invulnerability, damage, healing. And same with Junker Queen when she came out. It's like the big shout, which like gave your teammates health and speed. It's like similar to the big pack from Overwatch 1 and a big knife damage and the big axe. Like, you can kind of like these new heroes, it feels like they do more than old heroes just in their
Yeah.
general abilities.
I think how diverse a hero is what can make it like really OP at first. Because like when it's really diverse, you can use it in so many different comps, and like eventually you're just gonna get to this god comp that's like so well rounded because all these heroes have like really diverse features and they can cover like every aspect, like every weakness. So I think like the more diversity a hero has, the more OP it'll probably be. And like that's why I think Goromacha might not be that insane. Like I think he'll be good, but I think he'll have his like flaws and stuff because he just lacks high ground presence and stuff. Like I think that's like a huge issue with him. Like there's no way you could ever play him on like Gibraltar and stuff. So there's no way he'll be hard meta on those maps.
Yeah.
Oh, is he?
No. I was gonna say I think like it's pretty obvious. I think before pros even have to play it, we can kind of tell like which direction that hero's gonna go because it's obvious that Ram is good at what he does. Like he's good at brawling. But if you look at it from like a head overview, like it's pretty obvious to see what he's bad at. He has no mobility. He can't climb. He can't get to places fast. He's kind of like a Rhine, and kind of what Tapunk said. I think the new heroes kind of blow the out here, like the old heroes out of the water. Like Ram and Queen. Like why would you ever play Rhine?
Yeah, and like with Queen, like it's like why would you ever play like a dive tank when you can just give your Genji like 300 HP and a speed boost? It's like just spout and then like give like your whole team tank, like your whole team turns to tanks. It's like I don't know. At least for me, it was like really obvious that like oh like you like Queen's gonna be good everywhere. Like like long maps, like you have double speed boost, and then for like high ground maps, your DPS like into your tanks. So I think heroes that can like have OP like build that and just just do everything too well. And that's how a lot of the new characters are. They can do everything. Like Sojourn, she's a sniper, she's a close range dueler, in cap, stronghold. It's just like obvious she's gonna be really strong at pro play, like a pro play almost.
Is there? I remember talking to Gunba, and Gunba had a pretty interesting take on this. And he basically said like he feels every Overwatch 2 hero is over-designed. They just are able to do too much now. Like everyone has like every ability has like multiple use cases, especially like for Kiriko, like the Suzu seems over-engineered. Like the ability, like there are new abilities that come into the game, like teleporting through walls and stuff. Like, do you enjoy the general design philosophy that seems to have come in with Overwatch 2, where it feels like, you know, every hero does a little bit more in regards or in comparison to their role? Or do you think that's too much right now? Danteh says the new kits increase the skill caps, so he doesn't mind the design decisions taken.
The heroes now are just outclassed by the new heroes, like your Sojourn, your Echo. Maybe not like Genji and Tracer, but I think the heroes that come out now are a lot more fun. But I would agree, they do too much and they outclass the old heroes. Like why would you play BAP if Kiri does what BAP does better? Or why would you play Rhine if Queen and Ram and do all these things better that Ryan's supposed to be good at, you know?
Yeah, I agree. It's like Orisa as well. Like Orisa right now just has 3 cooldowns and you just can't kill her. Well, it's like really hard. And I feel like that's even in lower ranks. Like I've played with friends before, just quick play and stuff, and it's just if you're not up to like coordinating something, then it's just a cooldown cycle basically.
Sure. Now another thing that is always like pretty important towards competitive play is like the timing of the patches and probably also the volume, right? And now we can't necessarily ask the game to, you know, patch at the pace that Overwatch League would like, but we could theoretically ask, you know, Blizzard or the league to only deploy patches in a particular cadence. Would you rather always have the game up to date and it doesn't matter how often that means we're getting patches during the stages? Or what is your general idea like about patch timing and how it impacts competitive integrity?
I think I definitely disagree with the fact that they should be like during stages and stuff, because that ends up, because I feel like every stage, at least last year, kind of had their own identity. There was like the first stage, there was the Doom, the Monkey, like you kind of play a lot. The second stage, it was the Ana Zen. Third stage, the Junker Queen. So I think it's important that like certain stages have their identities. However, I think some teams kind of get punished for winning because they won the whole tournament, they played throughout. And so what I think they did last year was they would kind of release the patch as soon as the tournament was done. So all the teams that lost kind of have that benefit because they lost that they can kind of catch up, which kind of creates like an bit of like an unfair ness because I won and now I'm getting punished for winning, and you lost, so now you're getting rewarded for losing. That kind of makes sense. But during like a stage, I think is terrible because at the end of the day, Overwatch meta is like the last stage, for example, like the meta was like Diva on a Zen, right? And Boston were like insane at that meta. Like we could not beat Boston for the life of us. And then Dallas figured out that Zarya Bap Lucio beats Diva on a Zen within the same
yeah.
patch. And because of that, we were able to beat Boston. But had it been Nana Zen, we would not have won.
True.
Yeah, Punk?
I was just saying that's true. We were the best
Yeah.
NSN team in the league. Might as well say it. Just
Okay, but that was presumably then a change that came through just a meta evolution, right?
Yeah, that was just meta
yeah,
evolution. But I
that's
could
just
see how like
Dallas. So
balance
yeah.
changes could, like if they change it mid stage, it could like really affect certain teams, and that could be like it feels really unfair when you're on like the receiving end of it, like when you're like losing your strongest comp because they nerf and buff like your counters. So it could be frustrating actually if that happens to
Ye-
your team. But it
yeah,
could also be nice if you're on the team that gets like buffed. So
yeah. In that case, it was just like middle and Dallas just figure out, and lots of people follow, and that's
um
usually what happens.
yeah, in general, I think stronger teams are gonna complain about this more because like bad teams have nothing to lose, so when things change rapidly, like sometimes the meta changes like 2 days before a match. Like sometimes you're changing your comp like the day before a match because a team just finds an OP comp. And if there's more like chaos with the balancing, it's gonna benefit the bad teams more because they will have more upset potential. So I think good teams aren't gonna like that. Bad teams are gonna like it. I think that's how it'll be.
How did you guys then think about the patch timing last time during the playoffs? Did that like when you heard about that? What was your immediate reaction?
Well, I think, at least for me and Punk, like we were in the play-ins, so it kind of messed us up to where like Houston and Galads and Shock, they're all scrimming a completely different patch. So one, we can't scrim them. If we want to scrim them, we have to play on their patch because they're not going to scrim us then. And three, because we won play-ins, we had like a third of the practice time where teams like Houston or Shock had on that same patch, which kind of showed in the end. Like a lot of teams with the less experience like us in Toronto and whatnot, we kind of had lesser placings to where like Houston, Shock, first, third, and so.
Yeah, we had no practice for plans. There was just you could play the playoff teams, and they would play their patch, and we would try. You could either try and play what you were going to play in plans, or you could play the playoff meta, and which is just useless because
It's different
like
hero.
yeah, our goal was just to get through plans. Like we weren't even thinking about playoffs, and so you'd have to convince contenders teams like because they were also on a different patch, and so there was nobody to scrim. So we had to beg them, and then we play contenders teams on the wrong patch for them, and it's not good practice. And so I think that was a really bad patch timing. I think that was one of the worst ones I've experienced. But yeah,
Dante, do you what do you think, Dante? Like how much time? Presumably, let's say we always want a playoff patch just to keep things crisp. Because, I mean, realistically, if the team dominates through stage 4, that might make playoffs a little bit, predictive and like therefore boring. But let's say there's an argument that we always need a playoff patch. How much time should there be between like you getting access to the playoff patch and the playoff starting?
I think 3 weeks is good. 2.5, 3 weeks. I think you want enough time so the matches will be really good. Like teams get their practice in. The meta is more developed because if teams are like if you only have like a week or like 2 weeks or like within that threshold, I think teams are still trying stuff, and they feel forced to play like whatever is the best like meta comp like really early, or else like it's like a big gamble if you're like trying to play other stuff. And I think it'd just be better to have it longer. Let the meta let the meta settle for longer. It'll be more figured out. The matches will be better quality. I think just in general, more time is better. But it's also a lot of downtime between playoffs, so I don't know how it fits with the schedule. Um, I don't know. I think it's like hard to think about competitive integrity when we don't know like the scheduling and like the struggles of the league, like especially with World Cup being this year. I have no idea what the schedule will be like, so ideally for competitive integrity, more time is better, but I can understand if it's shorter.
What do you think about the people that say, well, being good at, or the best team in the world at a competitive Overwatch, I mean, the best team should be the best at figuring it out in 5 days, right?
That's just cap, because if you're like scrimming, if you're scrimming 4 teams on like the top side of the bracket, and then these 4 teams are scrimming each other on the bottom side, those 4 teams at the bottom can be playing a completely different meta than at the top side, because that's just what happens sometimes. Like there's like 5 teams that are scrimming each other, and then the other 5 teams are scrimming each other just because like scheduling, and then the meta is like really different, and then it's kind of like a gamble. It's like, oh, like these teams are playing way different things. Whose is actually better? And then one team's gonna have to swap like a day before the match or just lose. And like that's what happens a lot throughout stages. And it's like unfortunate. Even if you have the best players and coaches in the world, you can't figure out the best comp right away. Sometimes it's obvious. A lot of times it isn't. That's just how it goes.
And I think a pretty big example of that was like Vlad's during the Queen meta, as to where they kind of struggled in the beginning of the stage, but at the end they kind of dominated. But as to where it was just too late. So yeah, I think just because you have good players, good coaches, like it doesn't necessarily mean that the meta
They'll
is going to
figure
work
them
for
out.
you or you'll figure it out right away. I definitely think what he said, more time, is ideally better.
Can we bring that point up, and then I'm sure your coach will appreciate that very much, Danteh. But how good was Glad's at the end of stage 3? Did you all get to scrim them?
Yeah, they were a lot better. I remember when we were scrimming them, like we scrimmed them like right after a match. I think we were still pretty dominant, and then like towards the end of the stage, we scrimmed them. And we're like, wow, these guys are like really good now. Like we were like really hoping that they didn't make it to the tournament because it like depended on someone else's matches. We're like, please no glads, please no glads, please no glads, because like you don't want a team like that bottom seed. It like throws the tournament off a lot.
Do you think they
So,
could have won that stage if they had made it there?
probably not. I think that was just a fuel meta. It was just a Dallas fuel rush meta. Like sometimes it's like that. But I think they would have been a good contender. They would have spiced up the tournament.
Yeah, I think they would have got like top 3 probably.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would have made it way more exciting. But you know, it's good to see the Australians suffer, so I didn't mind it.
Now we talked a lot about like patch timing and the season format and whatnot. Generally, like, how did you like the season format last year? Because we had some mild introduction in terms of like the season points and that being rewarded, other than just tournament winning prize money. Like, did that add incentive to you guys, like wanting to participate in these stage tournaments, or are you always intrinsically motivated because I mean it's a tournament after all, right?
I think you're just always motivated for tournaments. I mean, like the money's like a bonus, I think, but in general, you just always want to prove you're the best and win. At least most players. Some players are probably motivated by money, but I would say most are motivated by just wanting to prove yourself in the tourneys.
I think
Yeah, go on.
I think that's generally the case, but I think a lot of the motivation is being able to travel to places that are attached to these tournaments.
Yeah, for sure, actually.
Because as a player, it's the best. Like free travel, free food, like living la vida loca. You know what I mean? Which was pretty big. Like I wanted to go to Hawaii, right? Some players didn't want to go to Hawaii because they've been there. But for somebody as a rookie, like I really wanted to go to Hawaii. But we did whatever we could. But I think if like tournaments like lose that kind of attachment, to like a location, I think it'll kick a lot of players like motivation out. That's my take.
Yeah, I think tournaments in general are just like exciting, and I mean usually there's money attached or like a LAN, and LANs are like the best part, I think, in my opinion. Like it's just so much more exciting and fun. So I think LANs, did a couple back end contenders, and they're just like the memories that you hold on to for a long time, and those are the best times. So I think it's always intrinsically motivating throughout the season. But
Yeah, definitely traveling is probably the second biggest motivation, or maybe even the biggest for me actually. Traveling and competing like in the tournaments to prove yourself. Like insane motivation for that.
The interesting part was like when I talked to a coach before, and we talked about the perceived importance that players have of like tournament win victories and like end of season playoffs. And that coach told me, like, at least for his players, they pretty much don't care that much about tournament wins at all. It's all about the big dub at the end. And like even, I mean, if you have a mediocre season, like that basically is what makes it, right? Is that your feeling? Like, would you, but how did you think about like doing well in the regular season, and then compared to, getting the victory at the end of it?
Well, in the end, all that matters is that you win playoffs. But in the moment, you're definitely like really motivated for those tournaments. Like it's hard not to be when you're like traveling. It's like the real deal, you know. So like I think after a tournament, in hindsight, you're like, okay, like oh, we just won that. Like okay, good, but like we're not done. Like we need to focus on like the playoffs. Or if you lose it, it's like all right, whatever. Like it sucks we lost, but like the real prize is winning grand finals because that's what everyone remembers in the end. So yeah.
Yeah, I think playoffs is like what Dante said, like that's what people remember. Like I couldn't tell you who won a stage the year before this year, like last year. Like I think the general audience doesn't really care too much, but I think as a player, I'm always trying to win, and I'm always trying to win at events and in front of crowds because I think at the end of the day, those type of like memories are not easy to come across. So I think you try to collect as many of those as possible.
yeah, I agree. I think it's just important to take it as it is, and those tournaments are what you personally remember. Like even if you don't remember what team won or whatever, like you'll remember if you won, and you'll remember how well it went and how good it was. So it's the tournaments are basically just like a little like playoffs every time. And then obviously playoffs, everyone remembers, everyone watches. That's like the pinnacle. But the mini tournaments throughout the season are just like little tasters.
It also, okay, so in a spectrum of how stressful a season feels, I think we're slowly moving away from the super stressful. Like Dante might remember like the travel schedule that was planned for what that would have destroyed a lot of player mentals, right? Like undoubtedly the amount of travel, especially for some of those teams like London, I don't know, like the amount of travel miles was nuts, like I don't know, twice around the globe during the season or whatnot. Now we're kind of de-stressing, there's less travel, maybe that's bad. It sounds like you guys enjoy that a lot to a degree.
No, okay. Like when you're traveling like once every 2 months, it's nice. But when you have to go like every week, it's so exhausting. Houston was one of the teams that had like homestands early before COVID. And like I remember like we traveled like 3 weeks in a row, or maybe we had like our homestand in Houston. But it was like when you're nonstop traveling, like you get home, you take a day off, and then or like you take that like day off like that you're getting home, and then you practice 3 days, and you're off on the road again. Like it's so exhausting. Like you can't even enjoy the traveling at that point because it's just so much.
For sure.
It was bad.
Do you think that would have ever been sustainable, that model, from a player perspective?
No,
Right.
Zero chance.
Yeah. How sustainable is it now? How does like the stress feel? Do you think the season should maybe be elongated a little bit, more breaks after each stage, like time to recuperate, rally, also would cut down on the lengthy off season? Or do you think the pacing is fine?
I had not many complaints this this season, or this last season. I think just maybe a longer mid-season break would be nice. And have like shorter breaks for like the 3 and 4, or 3 to 4 and like 1 to 3, because I think if you have like a proper time for break, then it makes it so the Korean players can go back home. If anyone else wants to go back home, it's nice. Like you actually have time. It just makes it so you actually have time for other things in your life. But with the breaks right now, like when you went to Hawaii, we didn't have much time coming back. We had like 4 days off coming back or something, and then we were back on the grind, or like back doing content at the office and then grinding again. So it felt like we didn't have much time after the midseason, but I think having a little bit more time could be nice.
How stressed were you,
Yeah,
Pop?
I agree with that. I think it's good to get away during the season, or like go somewhere and do something that's not the game. Like especially for us when we weren't doing too well. You know, you need to reset and you need to kind of get back on track. So I went for like a week to Europe in Portugal, and it was super nice. It was like it's like grounding and resets you. So I think a break in the middle is definitely probably the most important break that you should have. But you know, besides that, I don't have too many criticisms. I kind of like the format of the 3 tournaments and then a little break after. And then, I mean, I always like off season. I think it's good. It's more of that reset, and it keeps me hungry, because after a long break, it's like, okay, now I can get back to it, and I'm ready, and like fully immerse myself in just playing and being a player. So
Hydron, is your first off season too long?
I don't know. I don't have like any prior experience, but I would say, as somebody who's kind of always itching to compete, because I'd say I'm a naturally competitive person. Um, the shorter the better for me personally, but right now it's fine. I don't mind. It's nice kind of having the capability of taking a break, maybe going on a vacation somewhere is nice.
Hydron says that they started scrimming in November with Florida last year, and that they really made use of their time. So it's not really an issue of player strain, as they are scrimming anyway. What do you think? Should there be more events in the off season? Maybe something optional, like we bring World Cup back. You don't necessarily have to presumably compete in that if you don't want to. Would you like to have more off season events as sort of like elective in that?
Yeah, I mean, I've never personally done it, but I think the off season before being the World Cup, and it wasn't elective, I think that's like perfect, because I mean, kind of like real sports and like the NBA or whatever. Like these players have the option to go if they want to play in the Olympics during their time off. So I think an elective during the season is always good, but I also think having nothing during the season is good. I mean, isn't good
Mm-hmm.
during the off season.
yeah, an elective doesn't hurt. Personally, it's like, if I'm taking a break, then I'd rather just take a break and, not be half in, half out, and like maybe doing 2 scrims every week or something. It kind of takes away from both playing and having like a chill and off season. I'd rather do one or the other. So
For sure. Now, an interesting one is like the World Cup is of course back, and the scheduling of that, or the announced scheduling of how the World Cup falls, it's like there's probably going to be something in the middle of the season. Do you think that's a good idea, or should it be more separated, or is that maybe good that it is that just inserted? Like, what is your general idea, and how do you feel about the World Cup in general, in terms of like how it fits into the Overwatch competitive ecosystem?
I think it kind of splits your attention as a player in like 2 separate directions, and I think it generally benefits, like, for example, Korea, right? Because not every Korean player is going to get picked.
Oh.
And so there are going to be a lot of Korean teams that don't have players picked and are going to have the benefit of practicing while, let's say, for Team USA, there's predominantly like, there's probably like 10, 12. So 7 or 8 players from different teams are going to be missing a player for, who knows how long. While some teams are going to benefit because their players aren't getting picked up to play the World Cup.
Yeah, especially with like most Western teams have like European players too. So like they're probably like guaranteed for each country if they choose to play in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm for the World Cup. Every time I've done it, it's been so good. It has gone downhill since like 2018, but I think that's just in general, like it wasn't sustainable.
Hydron, you strike me as someone that wants to take this seriously, right? Is that
The World Cup,
yes?
for sure.
What do you think? Like, will you be competing against others in a role there?
I think the only other American hit scan is Aspire, which is tough. I don't think there are that many other American hit skins like that are in now. But yeah, I'm gonna do my best to make it over him. Whatever it takes and whatnot.
Should there be a role that you can only have X amount of players from each team? Because otherwise, like, what stops it being, AT against Shock, or like the Defiant against Shock plus Friends, like the third time in a season, right?
Yeah, I mean, that call is kind of on who ends up becoming the coaches because some coaches will perceive other players differently, and that's kind of on their call to make and how they want to like account for how good the player is or how good, how much experience they have with these players and how well they play together. So I definitely think it's on the coaches, like South Korea and like USA, to kind of navigate that in whatever way they think is the best for the team. But if I was a coach, I think it would be a pretty hard because then you could have players who are the best at some heroes, and then you have players in other roles who are probably like all right, and there are probably other players who are better at certain heroes or roles. But these certain group of players, like they play the best together, they have the most experience play together, and it's kind of like Dallas, where Dallas individually, like they were good, but like not every meta they were the best, but their synergy and how well they play together, like is the reason why they won so much and why they were so good.
Do you care to participate, Danteh? Will you be competing? I mean, there's some competition in your role, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna try out. Hopefully I can make it. There's a lot of good tank players. There's like Hawk, Kaluge, Super, Reiner. I think those are the main competition. Yeah, I'm looking forward to trying out.
Do you think it should be taken very seriously, or like, I mean, Super is sort of applying. I mean, there's no question about his quality as a player, but presumably he's been out of scrims by that point, like for 1.5 years, damn near, by that time. So, like, should you really just pick whoever is the best, or can it be just a fun event?
I think that's up to the committee. That's how Canada did it before. Like picking like XGC and Surefour. It makes sense from like a perspective of like bringing in an audience, and like people really like seeing people like XGC and Super compete. So I think it's probably better for the game, but like if you want to be competitive and like win it all, it's not the best. So I think it just depends on what the like committee of the country is trying to accomplish. Because
Right.
like there's gonna be like a lot more people that know like Super compared to like Kaluge or Fro. Like Super will have like endless fans at like BlizzCon, and like that brings the team a lot of publicity and stuff. So it just depends what the team wants to accomplish. And I think both routes are fine. Because in the end, it's like it's just World Cup. It's like is there even like prize pool? I don't know.
I'm
Is
not
there?
sure if that
I
is. But
personally think like I don't control what the committee thinks, but it should be to win because like at the end of the day, it's like it's kind of like the Olympics. It's like it's your country's pride. Like that's who you're playing for. You're playing to say that Team USA is #1, baby. Red, blue, like all day. So, and I think you saw that with when USA beat Korea, when I think like Corey and them played, that it was like this big, massive upset. Like USA finally did it. We took down the Giants, and now this upcoming World Cup, like South Korea is going to try to do their best to take their title back and do it for their country. So.
I mean, come on, like probably the top 5, like Korea could probably feasibly form like 5 entire rosters that could probably still be competitive with everyone else, right?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah.
Is that should they be forced to mix a little? It would suck if it was just Shock, right?
I mean, I think like if Krusty's coach, he'll probably mix it. That's what he did before. He didn't just pick all his players. Probably pick like the best players, and I think it kind of has to be mixed because a lot of Korean players boosted before, and I'm pretty sure like the rules, like the unsaid rules of the Korean team is like no boosters allowed. So they like try to pick up people that didn't boost at all. Like I'm pretty sure that's why Violet didn't play in the last World Cup. It was because like he just wasn't allowed to play on that team because he boosted before. So
Yeah.
I
know
think
Dallas
it'll
have
probably
that
be
rule.
mixed.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas is a no boosting team.
Yeah, and so Seoul.
Yeah, but I think World Cup should be competitive. At least for me, back in like 2018, I was just playing contenders, and then we had Custer come down, and Trill was like the next up, and so you've got all these guys from like this lesser known region, and we're not very good, and we want to like that's a stage for you to do well and to go far and like be shown. And I think it's a bit different now with like just tier 2 not doing too well in general. So I think it's not so much alike now these days in this World Cup. It like will be hard because there's just not as many players going for Overwatch League now. But like it was super important to me that like Custer came and played and Trill and everyone wanted to win because it's for pride and for your country. So and for also our opportunities to get to the league. I know everyone on the team wanted to go to the league and do well at the time, so it was important for all of us.
I think I kind of want to open one last question before we close this out, and it's one that's very topical. I feel like to almost the core identity of every esport, where it's like a lot of you are, of course, primarily selected for your ability to play the game well, and it's not necessarily because you entertain well, right? So there's a constant trade-off between how much competitive integrity can we allow our esport to have in comparison to like how entertaining should it be, right? Do you have a cutoff point in mind where you think, okay, this is going to get too silly here? Like this is my line. I won't go further than this. At that point, it becomes transformationally different. I'm here for competition primarily, or maybe you're very open to the entertainment aspect. I mean, Danteh, you're full-time streaming at the moment, right? Like,
yeah, I'm streaming a lot.
Where's your line? Do you mind dragging this more into entertainment? Maybe we can take the seriousness out of the competitive format a little bit, have a little bit more fun here and there. Where do you land on that?
Is this for World Cup or Overwatch?
Generally,
as well?
Overwatch League as well. Yeah.
I think just I think the smartest idea from like a player perspective is maybe like 20% like for like entertainment and like for fun and like in like marketing, and like 80% competitive integrity. Because I think the smart way to go about it is like you use Overwatch League, like you compete, you like do your passion, but you're also like gaining a following, and like you want to weigh out because like you can't be a pro player forever, and the league's not gonna last forever. And I think if you can like build up your stream and stuff like that while you're in the league, it makes it easier to do that because people are gonna watch you just because you're you. And I think a lot of players undervalue that, and it's something that should be valued because entertainment and like streaming and personality, it's like a pretty good career these days. You make a lot of money from it. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that I think for everyone in the Overwatch League right now, and the reason that people join and why it's a thing is because of the competitive drive and people want to see the best teams play and the best players play. But as Danteh said, it's a really good opportunity to build up yourself outside of Overwatch, even like streaming or personality and all that stuff, because that can last further than the league. And you know, even if you don't want to do the content creation or anything, just like talking to people and gathering other skills is super important. So entertainment is pretty valuable as well when it comes to being involved with the league.
I think personally for me, I'm kind of like the opposite, where I kind of have an idea as to what I want to do after the league is said and done and my career's over with. So for me, it wouldn't make too much sense to like put that much effort into content creation as like, or like just building a stream, as I probably won't be using that. But that's for the same reason why I still do it, because you need to have your plan Bs, your plan Cs, and your plan Ds or whatnot. But me, like competitively, if you're allowed to make the best team, like with your money, or if you're allowed to, if you're South Korea and you want proper lip hanbin, like you should be able to get those players, because at the end of the day, like it's to see who's better. That's what competition is. That's why there's a league, is to compete against each other at the highest level, and may the best man win.
Do you have like a hard line where that your team got close to, where you're like, okay, yeah, ease off on the content. I'm trying to play some competitive Overwatch here?
Me personally, no, because it was kind of hard to make content last year as my first year, because there's essentially no ranked, and Overwatch 1 was kind of dying. So yeah, maybe Danteh knows, because and plus no one on my team is kind of like a big streamer, or has kind of their stream set up, or that's something they're working towards. So it was kind of all business in Florida. So
I think you was talking about like team content, like forced
Yeah.
obligations.
oh,
Um,
no, I didn't have that problem.
I don't have a problem with it. I think maybe some people like the first year might be annoyed by it, but it's like it's part of the job. Like the teams need it to make money, and it like benefits you. So there's no reason to like throw a fit about it.
Should they maybe
Yeah, I
ask
don't
you
mind it.
more?
Um, I don't know. I think that depends on the org, because if they're putting money into the content, like they have to pay someone to record
Right.
it and stuff. So it has to be like in their best interest, and most of it's for like sponsors and stuff. So I think the org should just do whatever they're comfortable with.
So
Maybe the league could do it more, because the league has like a lot of power, like a lot more views and stuff. So if they could promote players and stuff, it helps the league, because like the viewers probably want to know the players more, and it also helps the players a lot more, because like they're getting out to so many people. So maybe it'd be better for the league to do it more rather than teams.
sure. Anything else to add, Punk, Hydron?
We never really had a problem with like doing too much content. I know a lot of players complain about it because it's not what they like want to do, but you have to.
Punk says that the team staff creating the content realize which players are more up for it and incorporate those more. It also doesn't take that much time, in his opinion. Both Hydron and Danteh agree that as long as the content is properly scheduled and doesn't force a player to miss practice or forces them to show up on their off day, they don't really have issues with it.
That's when I think it can be frustrating, but other than that, it's not bad if your team schedules it well.
Right. Okay. Let me get one quick fire question out, and then we'll piece out of here. If you can't say your own team, based on who the teams are that currently have been assembled, who do you think is the favorite for Season 6? Danteh. Who's
Shock.
Shock?
Yeah,
Shock.
I think it's got to be Shock.
What about
There's
Atlanta?
just so much hype. Oh,
I think Atlanta has more probably problems that they're gonna have to go through that Shock probably doesn't. Like with language barrier, probably players coming to America for their first time. Or like, just kind of mixed team problems where Shock one was already a team for like a year or two. They're all good friends, and two, that the fact that they've already proven results with about like half their core, or like kind of have like a core there. So yeah, probably them.
All right.
yeah. Atlanta seems like a fresh team, so it's they're gonna have to go through their stuff.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. Then I thank you for sticking through this. Hopefully this is watchable after some internet issues. I apologize to listeners for that. And thank you guys very much for sitting down with me. Peace.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.